Sisters, and this is the STEAM League, where we get to learn about the day-to-day careers, aspirations, and origin stories of incredible superheroes in science, technology, engineering, art, and math.
Yep, and today we're very excited because we get to be joined by the amazing Amber Sandy.
Hey, Amber.
Yay! Hi.
So Amber is the coordinator of Indigenous Knowledge and Science Outreach at Ryerson University's Sci Exchange, and she is also an Indigenous science advocate, a beater and high tanner, and an environmentalist who previously worked at the Toronto Zoo.
You wear so many hats.
I do.
Welcome to the STEAM League, Amber. It's so nice to see you again.
Yeah, we're super excited.
It's nice to see you too as well. Thanks so much for inviting me.
Of course. So, if everybody's ready, we're going to dive right in with a quick game.
Okay, and this is going to be a quick fire round of questions. We have a hat filled with questions, and we have a little friend, a little fish that's going to help us grab those questions. Okay, so the first
You're going to understand the fish in a little while.
is this one.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
All right, Amber. First question. What is your favorite food?
Pizza.
Ooh,
That was quick.
I like that.
Okay.
Important question. Are you a pineapple on pizza type of person?
Absolutely.
High
Okay,
fives.
that's like, I knew we liked you, Amber.
Okay, next question.
Favorite place to be?
My home community, Neashiniming, which is also known as Cape Croker.
Oh, where is that?
It's on the Bruce Peninsula in Ontario. It's very, very beautiful.
And oh, this fish is too hungry. Just one. Can take it for you.
Okay, so our next question, Amber, is what is the most meaningful animal to you in your work?
That is a tough question.
We asked
I'm gonna say a moose is the most meaningful animal to me because lots of different reasons.
I like the voice.
good answer. Okay,
Next question.
Next one is, what's your latest creative project?
Ooh.
I've been doing a lot of fish skin tanning.
Yeah.
Fish skin tanning. Ooh, we're excited to learn more in the next set of questions. Okay, perfect. Amber, what would your superpower be?
Hide tanning, I think. I think that's a pretty good superpower. Turning an animal skin into leather, it's a pretty good superpower.
That's a pretty
Totally
great superpower.
agree.
Totally agree. You can use it for so many different things.
Yeah.
Okay. Who would you want to share a meal with from history?
Ooh, that is a really tough one.
We're putting you on the spot today.
I'm gonna say Pauline Johnston, who is a very famous Indigenous poet and actress, and she did a lot of stuff here in Ontario specifically during her career. So I would love to be able to sit with her and ask her questions and learn more.
That sounds incredible.
I might want to snag an invite to that meal.
I'll tag along too. Okay, so your next question is, we know that you bead. Do you have something that you've beaded that means the most to you, or pick one thing that means a lot to you?
While you think about it, we'll just show everyone an example of some of your beading, which is
Super cool. So this one
beautiful.
is
Blueberries. Oh, I love this.
I have a sample right here too that I can show. And I guess I haven't really created something that I would say is the most meaningful to me, because every piece is so meaningful for different reasons, like that one that you just showed. This is a pair of vamps that I just recently finished.
Ooh, nice.
And these are just supposed to be little forget-me-nots on it. But I think this is really meaningful because forget-me-nots remind me of my grandmother, my Nokomis. So I wanted to bead them. And this is going to be a gift for my aunt. So that's really meaningful. And I could go into it so much more than that, but this is rapid fire. So
That's
That's so beautiful
though. That
and,
is
and so
absolutely
meaningful as well. Oh, it's beautiful. And you're
You're
so
really
skilled.
good.
Thank you.
We've tried our hand at beading before, and yeah, you've got
We're
some skills there.
here, and we're off the screen.
Okay.
Years of practice.
You are a hide tanner. We mentioned that earlier. What is the most difficult skin that you've tanned? Both.
I think the most difficult skin that I have personally tanned so far is a like really, really thick and really big buckskin. So it's a male and it's old and their skin is really tough. And I think it was harvested in the winter. So its skin was extra thick because of that.
Insulation.
Yeah, but I haven't done a moose hide yet, but those are even tougher than deer.
Wow, maybe that's going to be a future project.
It is, for sure.
Wow, cool. Okay. Amber, what is your favorite tool that you use in your work?
I have so many favorite tools. That's really hard. But I do have one sitting right here that has been my favorite recently. And this is just a piece of moose antler.
Ooh.
And it's cut into a little scraper, so it's not a sharp edge or anything, but it works really well to work with hides, and I use it on my fish skin as well. So I'm using this tool like all the time recently.
Multi-purpose. That's so interesting.
Okay, so now we have one last, I think it's last one. Yeah, it is. One last rapid fire question. What was your favorite subject in school?
My favorite subject in high school was definitely biology. But then when I went to university, it became history.
Ooh. Oh, I love that combination. Also,
it's a really good example of STEAM, having all sorts of different kinds of things hand in hand together.
Yes,
exactly. Absolutely.
Perfect. Well, thank you so much for taking part in the quick fire. Say goodbye, Fish.
Oh, okay. Bye. Now explore the who, what, where, and why. I'm not even a quiz. And now, Amber Sandy and her career with some career questions.
How did you become an Indigenous Knowledge and Science Outreach Coordinator, which you are at the Ryerson University Sci Exchange?
So it's a really interesting sort of roundabout way that I got there. I explained to you that I was really interested in history in university. So when I was in my undergrad, I actually studied Indigenous studies and Canadian history. And I became really passionate about learning about the history of the lands that we're on and the Indigenous history of Toronto specifically. So one of my first jobs was working to create a smartphone app that documented all the Indigenous historical sites around Toronto, so you could look it up and like go on a little tour and learn about the history of the areas around the city. And through that, I just ended up working in community-based projects and focused a lot on museum work and working with elders and seniors and knowledge holders. And then in a roundabout way, ended up getting a job at the Toronto Zoo for their Turtle Island Conservation Program. And it was there that I started learning all sorts of new stuff about the environment, about biology, about species at risk specifically, because our focus was reptiles and amphibians of Ontario, most of which are species at risk. So it was a big learning curve for me, but I loved it. And I loved being in the field and learning about it. And I got to travel around to different First Nations communities around Ontario and find out more about the environmental work that each one of them did. And the more I learned about our stories and our history and the way that we live on this land, the more I started understanding how scientific that was and how impactful that was as well. And so it just became something that I became really passionate about, just being able to share how all of our stories, all of our languages, especially for Anishinaabe people, are inherently scientific. So even with our languages, one word describes so many things. Like it's really hard to translate it into English. So one word that describes a blueberry, for example, might describe the shape, the texture, the taste, the smell. It could describe where it's found, when it's found, who's picking it, all sorts of things. And so because of stuff like that, we're just inherently taught to look at the world around us from the scientific view of observation. And I've been really passionate about it ever since then.
That's really cool. You've taken such an incredible journey to be where you are now, but so many different things of what you said really struck me, including that bit about the language and how scientific it is and all the different parameters about observation that go into what that one word is. That's amazing.
Mm-hmm.
So I want to learn one of these languages.
Well, I've started learning a little bit. It's so interesting.
It is. I can write my name in OG Cree, but I need to increase.
We're trying to expand our languages. Learning a little bit of Huron-Wendat.
Ooh. Well, that's super cool. And
I was a little bit curious though about the app that you mentioned, because that's so cool that it's interactive and you get to learn about those different pieces.
So it's called First Story Toronto, and I think you can get it on the Google Play Store still. It's really old, and we had a website as well, and it was a really great resource for learning more about the history of the areas that you wanted to learn about in Toronto.
So our next question is, what does it mean to you to share your knowledge as a beader? We mentioned bead.
An amazing beader.
And as well as an Indigenous science advocate.
It means a lot because I think for me, one of the major driving forces behind the work that I do has been the accessibility for me to learn these things, which really wasn't there. And I had to work really, really hard and be super dedicated to putting myself out there and spending time in community and building my relationships and doing things in a good way to be able to access the knowledge that I have now and to be able to learn the things that I have now. And same with beading. When I first started beading, before I was even doing any of this work, there was just a lack of people doing it around me, and nobody to really show me. So I started by doing it on my own. And I was primarily self-taught until I started finding more beaders around, and it really kind of opened up community to me. And that's, I think, why it was so important. So being able to share that with other people, especially other Indigenous people who want to learn, it's very meaningful. It's so amazing when you can teach a youth or a student or just an Indigenous person that their knowledge is science, and that like the stories or the recipes or, you know, the things that they're learning from their communities, their grandparents even, are inherently scientific, and that it's valid science, you know, and that they should be proud of that, and that there's a lot to learn from those stories and those teachings that they've been told. You know, I don't like saying the word validate because nothing should have to validate Indigenous knowledge. But it does, and we've been taught through all of the historical injustices that have happened to Indigenous people that our ways of being and our ways of knowing are invalid. So it's very impactful when you can actually flip that around and share how it is valid and how it's important.
Yeah,
absolutely.
I think it's absolutely beautiful. The relationships that you're talking about, that you're building to share the idea that all of this, the ways of being, the ways of knowing, and ways of doing are all not just valid, but super important, and not just, you know, people who are in Indigenous communities, but everybody
can learn from that. Absolutely.
Yeah. That's beautiful.
And I also love the sense of community there, because that it really is more than just having a single person thinking that they're doing science, because it's more than just the single person. Science is also for everyone, so that's really important as well.
Yeah,
cool.
Future's
Yeah. Okay. Our next question is, you're currently now building on your career by studying environmental sciences for your master's. Tell us more about what your focus is and where you'd like to take it.
My focus for that is, I guess, has turned more into how we can look at animals and specifically look at things like hide tanning, the knowledge of hide tanning, and the knowledge that people have to be able to know more about the environment and about things that are happening in the environment. So how does tanning a deer hide help to inform a community about the changes that are happening due to climate change? You know, because there's some really obvious things that happen to animals, and Indigenous people have had tons of environmental knowledge since time immemorial. And it's by being hands-on and being a part of the environment around them and by working with animals. So I think exploring that is really important, and that's kind of where I'm hoping to go with that.
Cool. Ooh, can't wait to hear more.
Well, we're going to go back to beading. You held an online beading workshop during the pandemic, and that brought people together virtually to share that experience. And we've both had the opportunity to bead before in a similar group that was in person, because it was before the pandemic. And it was such an incredible experience, and not just beading, but the storytelling and sharing during the experience. So we're wondering what it was like to bring so many people together during a crisis, a time of crisis like the pandemic.
It was really neat, and when I first thought of it, it wasn't even necessarily because of bringing people together, but I guess I was like, you know, I have all these beaders who I am fortunate enough to have this beautiful community on Instagram specifically, and it would be so neat to just be able to bead with them. And because I know I'm not going to be able to see other people in person for quite some time, that's kind of what it was born out of. And I met a lot of the people who participated with me at the beading symposium that was held in Winnipeg. And it was a really beautiful space where we got to, you know, do exactly that, bead together, share stories, and build our beading community. And as time went on doing those online sessions, I had so many people reach out and say, you know, that they had been wanting to bead, but they just didn't know where to start. And how it was really nice that they could log on and watch the two of us bead together and hear their stories, hear how people started beading, ask us questions or ask for tips and stuff like that. So it was turned out to be a really beautiful way to share with a lot of people, and it was very nice.
Yeah, that is really beautiful. And you were recognized by the CBC and some other groups for this initiative. How did that feel?
It was pretty cool. It was really neat to see how much traction a movement like that gained, you know, and like it's a lot of work to plan those things, right? So it felt really nice to hear that, and to also just be able to support other artists, especially artists who don't have other jobs, like their full-time job is beading, and to be able to provide a space where they got to show what they were working on, and hopefully more people found out about them, kind of thing. It's great.
Yeah.
Spreading the word. That's
And
so amazing.
brings it back to community. So that's really beautiful again.
It's awesome. You've spoken of Indigenous people as natural scientists. Can you talk a little bit more about what that means and what non-Indigenous folks and allies can learn from them?
Yeah, so like I mentioned before, science is inherently a part of our culture through our stories, through our languages, and the way that we interact with the environment around us. So by natural scientists, I mean that we're born and raised into a culture that teaches us the values of being a part of the environment. And for me, when I learn about Western ways of science, especially around the environment, it's very much other than, you know, we look at the environment as outside of us, which I couldn't believe, because we're not outside of it. We are a part of it. Everything we do impacts the environment. And we're taught as Anishinaabe people that we have to think of the ways in which we impact the environment. And that those lessons are really, really important for all of us to learn, whether it's harvesting or, you know, building on land or anything. We are taught that we need to have an understanding of that relationship. And so I think non-Indigenous people can learn from that and start talking about the environment as a part of us and a part of our communities and our cultures as well, because I mean, we're all a part of the environment in our communities. Whether you live in Toronto or whether you live in a rural area, you are still part of an environment, you know? I could walk to High Park, for example, and it's beautiful there. There's lots of nature. It's the environment, and I live around here, and this is a part of it. So I think being able to teach, especially kids, that they're a part of it, hopefully would make them think twice before they decide to litter or, do something that might negatively impact the environment. And I think that that's a really big lesson that a lot of people can take from natural scientists.
Yeah, for sure. And there's never been a more important time to re-emphasize that we're all part of the environment.
Exactly.
Yeah. And all of our actions have an impact on the environment and other people around us and any other being around us, so for sure.
Yeah. Okay, so before we go on to some more career questions, we want to take a little break to play a little game and have Amber explain that photo. We have photos from your Instagram. We're going to ask you to explain it.
Okay.
Are you ready, Amber?
I am.
So this is the first one.
This is beautiful.
It's gorgeous.
This is a daisy chain that I made, and each one of those daisies is made with by caribou hair tufting. So it's a method of sort of embroidering, but using the hair of either a moose or a caribou. And in this case, it's caribou. So the white hair is the natural color of a really light part of the caribou. And then the little yellow insides are dyed caribou hair. And you can't see really well in the picture, but it's like beaded all around the edge. And then I braided a rope to attach them on so that you could tie it around your head. And that rope is made with home tanned deer hide that I tanned myself.
Wow. Incredible.
Yeah, this is absolutely a gorgeous piece.
Thank you.
I don't know which way's up or down, but this is another one.
Oh, cool. Yeah, you guys were digging through the archives.
Yeah, we were.
I have had lots of opportunities to spend time in museums and with different archaeological collections as well. And it's been really, really neat to learn about that. So I can't specifically remember, because I think this was a while ago, what this was, but I know it was a collection of points or different projectiles that were collected in the Ontario area, I believe.
This was really intriguing to us because we wanted to ask you what your favorite tool was, and when we were digging through the archives, we saw that you had an interest in tools yourself.
Yep, I definitely do.
Okay, we've got one more. It's two photos from the same post, so I'm going to try and make it visible here.
Cool. Yes. So this is one stage of deer hide tanning, and that is my mentor Brenda, who I've been helping her tan hides. And I wish I was helping her this year, but I can't be.
Right.
But I've been helping her and learning from her how to tan hides. So that is a deer hide that we had just strung up, and we were getting busy scraping it to clean it. So the first one is before it is scraped, and then the second one you can see that there's no more flesh on it, and it looks pretty like white and uniform. So it's ready for the next stage.
Neat.
Wow.
Yeah. How long does this process take?
It depends on the way that you're doing it, but it takes a long time. So when Brenda was teaching me how to do hides, the process takes like over a month to do one hide.
Wow.
Yeah. So it's very time consuming and very physically taxing as well.
It's dedication and commitment right there.
Yeah.
Beautiful. Okay, so there's no hiding from the fact that you're amazing, Amber. So we want to learn a little bit more about you with these next few career questions.
Okay. So the next one is actively creating space for Indigenous voices in science and in STEAM in general is super important, and you advocate for that. But what change have we yet to see that we can all help to make?
I think for me, the biggest change that I'm yet to see is our school system change. In Ontario specifically, by the time you go into like grade 10, you really need to decide what you're going to do with the rest of your life. And if you decide that science is not going to be your thing, or you just decide not to take university level sciences, then it's going to be really a big struggle for you to focus on sciences in university after. And that's a struggle for a lot of people, and that's a struggle for a lot of Indigenous people. So a lot of, we don't often see Indigenous students in the sciences. They're very rare, and especially at Ryerson, it's extremely rare to find an Indigenous person in the sciences. And one of the barriers that's holding them back is exactly that, the way that our school system's structured. So a lot of people don't know that we have a ton of First Nations reserves in Ontario, like so many of them. Most people don't know how many, but if you look up a map, you'll probably be shocked about the amount we have in Ontario. And each one of those reserves has their own school system that kids will go to up until either middle school or high school, but it's normally high school. So by the time you are ready for high school, you then have to leave your community to go to school in places in northern areas like Thunder Bay, and those communities that are north of Thunder Bay. They actually have to leave their home community to go to school. So those kids go stay with sometimes relatives, sometimes they stay with people that they don't know who provide houses for students. And can you imagine being in grade 9 and you're not only shockingly going to high school, but you're going to high school with a bunch of people who are not from your culture, and you're living in a place that's completely different, right? So by that time, your level of science is quite different than the peers around you. And Indigenous schools are notoriously underfunded, and they have a hard time maintaining educators, and that definitely impacts the sciences as well. So unless you go to a school and you have an amazing science teacher and they've kept you going, then your level of science knowledge is going to be quite different than your peers by the time you go into high school. A lot of Indigenous students, when they go into high school, are often encouraged to take college level programming because of that vast difference. And I think that's what I want to see change. Something has to change to make sciences more accessible for Indigenous people in general. Science has always kind of been one of those things that has left us outside of it and has not included Indigenous voices and Indigenous knowledge. And we're slowly starting to see that change, but there needs to be more commitment to that. And often I get asked, what can we do as like an institution or as a group to make science more accessible? And the answer is pretty simple. It's to include Indigenous people and to make jobs for them and to hire them. And that's what I always like to say, just make that space and hire Indigenous people, because if you don't have Indigenous people working for your organization, you're trying to do Indigenous science outreach, it's just not going to go well,
Yeah, definitely.
Well said.
Yeah.
Well said.
Clearly, lots of change still needs to happen.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And having those people in those positions, hiring Indigenous people, will also help to provide role models for youth to see that there are people in those positions and there's a path that they can follow and somebody that they see that's like them. It's
exactly.
Role models that are like you. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Really important. Okay. Our next question is, the first time that we met you, Amber, you were sharing your work tanning fish skin. And also you tan hides. There's a lot of science behind that process, as we've already alluded to. Can you tell us more about how it's done and what it can be used for?
It depends. The fish skins and regular hide are different, although it's essentially the same procedure. So basically what you're doing is you're taking the skin of an animal and you're doing various things to it and introducing stuff that then transforms it from like a raw skin into a tanned piece of hide. Deer hide, for example, there's quite a complicated steps and process that you have to go through in order to change that skin into leather. But one of the really cool things about it is that we call it brain tanning. And that's because we use the brain of the animal on the hide at a certain step, which helps to break down the collagens and the fibers in the skin. So the brain is full of fatty tissues, and there's certain fats in there that are perfect for assisting and breaking down these fibers in the skin. And each animal has enough fats in its own brain to do that for its entire hide, which is really amazing. So it's best if you can get a hide, like a deer hide, and use that deer's own brain for this. But that step helps to really break down that skin and turn it into the beautiful soft leather that we then call buckskin or home tan hide, which I have here in my hair ties. So that is quite different. But then fish skin tanning, which I have been doing a lot of lately, is fun because it's a little bit more small scale, easy to do. Anybody can do it with stuff you probably already have in your kitchen, which is pretty cool. And I have a sample piece right here. I just finished this one yesterday, actually. But this is just a piece of skin that came from a sushi store down the street from my house. They saved me their skins. And all I did was soak it in tea for about a week. And there's a few steps to it, but the tannins that are in tea attach to all of those fibers that make up this hair, and they make it into a really strong and stiff fabric. And if you think of fish skin, it seems like thin and, not hard enough, but because of those tannins, it helps build it up, and it actually gets really thick, which is very interesting. So it changes the composition of the skin. And the other neat thing about it is that skin is made up of collagen fiber, whether that's deer skin or fish skin. And fish skin has a certain weave that is called a regular weave. So it's kind of hard to see, but you see those lines and how they're going in specific directions. It's a really tight-knit weave that's a regular weave. So that makes fish skin one of the strongest skins that is out there. So it's even stronger than a piece of moose hide, for example, which has an irregular weave. So it can tear a lot more easily, even though they're both still really strong materials. So yeah, tanning, in short, is a way of changing the composition of the skin. And there's a lot of different steps that go into it, but it is very scientific. And there's a lot of traditional science that goes into it.
That's pretty amazing.
Yeah, that's
and super cool.
I love the idea that using the brain of the same animal is the perfect way to actually do that part of the process. That is using your brain.
And it's the tea that you use to tan that fish skin. Is it just regular black tea that you would find?
Yep, just regular black tea. So traditionally you would use bark. So some trees have bark that are higher in tannin than other trees. But because I live in the city and I'm not about to go scrape bark off a tree around here, tea is really easily accessible, and it's a great way to share with other people that even if you're having a piece of fish for dinner, you can make leather out of that skin, Some people, I like to eat skin too, so some people eat the skin, but if you're not and you're just typically throwing it out like a sushi restaurant, what a great way to repurpose something that would otherwise be thrown in the garbage.
So
no
amazing.
waste. That's great.
Yeah, that's amazing, and I can see how easy it would be to get hooked on doing that.
Yeah.
So how would somebody start?
Yeah.
Well, I recently put together a little tutorial for tea tanning on my Instagram, so you can find that on my highlights, and my handle is @ambsandy, so AMBSANDY. And this week we're sharing it on our Sci Exchange page, which is pretty cool. But that's a great way to start. There's lots of online resources. There's some videos that other people have created as well. So for me, it was really experimenting till I found the right way to do it. And taking classes with other hide tanners online even really helped me a lot too. So yeah.
What are you going to do with that particular piece?
I don't really know. I have a lot of fish skin tanned now, but I haven't had a specific thing in mind for it. I've just been getting to the part where I have it tanned and I'm like, I should make something with it, but I haven't yet.
Next time we see you, we're going to have so much fish skin. Okay, well, not every project turns out the way you would hope. you documented yourself some fish skin tanning projects where things went a little bit awry, including temperature issues and dead tanning, but that's exactly what the scientific process is all about. So what did you get from those experiences? And by the way, what is dead tanning?
I think I have my sample here too, hold on. So for me, it's really important to experiment with the things that I'm doing, especially with fish skin tanning. So nobody really around here has done it that much. So it was really a process of me learning how to do it and testing the waters and figuring out what works best. So it was important to give that a try. And I've had quite a few flops, definitely some fish skins that turned into mush and I couldn't turn into leather after. But that's all part of it. And it's important to go have those experiences because you learn so much from it, and through all of those failed experiments, I now am able to share with people a successful and easy way to tan fish skins. So that has been really fun. Dead tanning. So this is a piece of dead tan fish skin, and this is a piece of good tanned fish skin. So this piece, basically dead tanning is when the whole outside of the skin gets tanned, but the inside stays raw. And that happens when you start tanning your fish skin in too strong of a tea bath. So for this one, day 1, you start with 5 bags of tea. Day 2, you do 10. Day 3, you do 15. And then after that, you do 20. So you're gradually stepping it up. And that allows the tannins to penetrate the skin evenly and get to the inside of it. Without that, when you have it just in a strong tea bath, you'll dead tan it. So when you take it out, it looks like it's tanned, it's fine. But as soon as you start drying it, you realize it's not gonna soften nicely and it stays really crispy. Can I kind of hear that? And it rips really easily. So that's dead tanning.
Interesting. What are some things you can make with the tanned fish skin?
You can make anything you would make with leather out of fish skin. So it's got the same, strength and everything like that. It is also like a waterproof material, which is kind of cool. So you can make anything. You can make wallets, you can make belts, you can make bags, whatever you could imagine making out of leather, you can make with fish skin.
I'm so excited to start.
Yeah. That's amazing. Okay, so on a maybe broader level even, what's one mistake that you've made that actually turned out to be a great lesson?
During your career at some point?
Maybe when I left the zoo. So I left my job at the zoo and I decided that I no longer wanted to continue my work there and that it would be better for me to do stuff for my own consulting company. So I did that for quite some time. And I also had to work on the side just to support myself through that because, your jobs can come far and few between kind of things. So that was a big lesson about how hard it is to sort of be an independent consultant and do that work. But also that I could do that I could step away and do that work. It wasn't necessarily a failure, but I certainly was happy to get the job at Ryerson and go back to working for an organization where, I had a lot more accessibility and that kind of thing. So
yeah. Challenges along the way. Well, another question is, when was the most exciting moment of your career and all the other, hats you've worn so far?
Oof. That's a toss-up. I've had some really exciting moments. I'm going to tell you 2 of them.
Okay.
So one of my first jobs out of university, it was probably my second one. I was coordinator for this research project working with materials collections and elders and seniors. So we would bring these Indigenous elders and seniors to different museums and collections, and they would get to be hands-on with collections and objects. And this project ran for a couple years and the elders loved it. They loved going on trips and loved seeing things. So one day at one of our like bi-weekly meetings, we asked, what do you guys want to do next? And they said they wanted to go to the Smithsonian in Washington, D.C. And we were all like, oh. So we fundraised for about a year, and we raised enough money to bring everybody to the Smithsonian in Washington, D.C. for a week. And we got to go behind the scenes and be hands-on with collections, which was really cool. And we had the curators there pull objects that were from the seniors and elders home communities. So they got to see objects that came from where they're from. So that was really, really such a beautiful experience.
Amazing.
That's pretty incredible.
And congrats on doing that. That's not a small feat.
That's quite a feat.
Yeah.
It was pretty amazing. So that was one highlight, and then the other one would be last year at Ryerson, where we got to do our first ever deer hide tanning workshop on campus for Science Literacy Week, and it was just amazing. Like I think back and I have such fond memories, and I was so happy and exhausted for a whole week of doing it, but it went so well, and it was just so nice to be able to bring together community and create something that was so meaningful and impactful for the Indigenous community and for the people who participated, and also the people who got to come learn about the Indigenous science of hide tanning.
Yeah, that is
so
incredible.
cool.
Making it accessible in downtown Toronto. How about that?
Yeah.
What's one piece of advice you'd give to someone who's interested in your field and the things that you do?
I would say that you just got to go for it, and you have to prioritize relationships with people. We are definitely taught, I've always been taught while doing community work, that the relationships we build are very meaningful and you have to follow through on them. So even those elders and seniors I was talking about from the Smithsonian, I still have relationships with all of them, and I still visit them and call them and see them, and you have to maintain those, and you have to, when you decide to step into a role and you take on that responsibility of being there, you have to see it through. Often in our communities, our relationships are reciprocal. So if I want to learn how to tan hides, for example, I can't just go ask somebody to teach me how to tan hides. The best way to do that is to find somebody who tans hides and to ask them if you can help them. Because then you're learning while also being a participant and helping somebody else do their work. So I think that that's a really meaningful way to conduct yourself when it comes to like mentorship and doing that, because in this field, learning about Indigenous science and Indigenous knowledge, it's all about those relationships that you build, and it's all about being there and being a part of that environment as well.
Yeah, and people speak about being solitary in science sometimes, but that's such a way to think about it, and a way that we can all learn from, for sure.
Mm-hmm.
Really good advice.
Yeah.
Well, it's been fantastic about your career, and we want to shift gears a little bit to learn more about what it's like to be an Indigenous science advocate and environmentalist. So we're going to now play a game called Show and Tell. Do you have something to show us, Amber?
I sure do. I'm so excited about this. I mean, I showed you guys a lot of stuff so far, though.
Material here.
But I have this one specifically, so I don't know if you can see that very well.
Ooh,
This, can you guess what that is?
Okay. It looks, is it a scale of some sort?
Yep, it's a fish scale.
oh my goodness, it's so cool.
So this is a fish scale that has been cleaned really, really well, so it has no more oil or residue, because often when you see scales, they'll have dark color or whatever. And when you look at these really, really close, you'll see all the lines on them. And fish scales are sort of similar to rings or tree trunks, where you can tell the age of some fish based on the rings that are on their scale, which is pretty cool.
That's mind-blowing. It's so cool.
So you can...
So that's, yeah, you can tell the age of them, and you can, even looking at their scales or their skins, even when you're working with fish skin, you can tell a lot about their life, right? You can see whether they lived in a healthy environment. You can see sometimes there's like bite marks on fish that you find where patches of scales were taken off, like it got scratched or something, and then they grew back. There's all sorts of things you can learn from fish. But this is a scale that I received recently when learning to do some fish scale art, which is a traditional Métis form of artwork. So they use these scales to create really beautiful like flowers and stuff like that to decorate things. And part of that has been my interest in learning about this has been my journey of learning how to use more parts of the animals that we harvest. So I wanted to share that with you guys.
That's incredible. And it blows my mind that you can count the rings on the fish scale to see how old it was, like a tree.
They're really the trees of the sea. That's amazing. And wow, I really, really love that we can see the science, but also the art and the combination of that in this as well. It's so beautiful.
It goes hand in hand really well. And I can't wait to see the art that you make with it.
Thank you.
Keep us posted. Oh, that's amazing.
I will.
Okay, so I think we have some time for a few questions that we reeled in from the audience. So shout out to all of you who sent in questions.
One question is, what does a normal day look like for you?
That depends. Right now, a normal day looks like setting up in my home office and, having Zoom meetings and preparing for our summer programming, which we're now doing all online, which is very different. But I would say typically in the summer, I spend a lot of time in community and on the land, learning with people and from people. So it really varies. Some days it's out harvesting things and working with community members, and then other days it's doing desk work and sitting at my computer all day.
A lot of variety.
Yep.
So the next audience question is this what you planned to do when you were younger? Did you always think you would be doing this?
No, I didn't. I remember when I was younger, I wanted to be like a dentist, and then I wanted to be a biologist and work. So I always kind of wanted to do something with environment. I was obsessed with I used to have a little science kit where the area I lived in, we had tons of frogs. So if a frog got hit by a car, I would get obsessed with wanting to dissect it and learn about it. And so I always kind of knew I would be something in biology or something with environment. But I had no idea that it would be possible for me to pursue Indigenous science, which I think is pretty neat.
I think it's pretty neat too.
I think our last question from the audience is, what do you like most about your career?
I love everything about my career. I love that I get to be social and spend time with community. I love that I get to be on the land. I love that I get to share my passion with so many people. Maybe that's the biggest one, that I get to share my passion with so many other people and inspire them to learn more about it or get involved.
Yeah, well, what you do is very inspiring, and we're very inspired to start getting involved in some of these things. So thank you.
Yeah, you're incredible. So thank you to the audience for sending in those questions. And we have time for one last question, which is, what's next for you, Amber?
I don't know. I mean, I think this year is really strange. We're not really sure how September is going to shape up. But I'm just going to keep going with it, and until I can, spend time with my mentors again and spend time learning from those people and helping them, I'm just going to keep going and doing what I can and keep sharing what I can also on social media and stuff. So I'm not sure what's next, but I'm excited for the future.
I like that optimism. We'd like to say miigwech.
And thanks so much for joining us on the STEAM League. And everyone, you can find more STEAM League superheroes on our YouTube channel and at steamsisters.ca.
Miigwech.